Mr. President, I take this time to urge my colleagues to vote for the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I have the honor of serving on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and was present during the hearings that we had in regards to the ratification of this treaty, listened to the witnesses that testified, listened to all of the arguments that have always been made about treaties, and I must tell you, it was overwhelmingly supportive of the ratification of the treaty. I want to acknowledge the work of Senator Lugar, who's on the floor. He's been a real champion on basic human rights issues and advancing it through treaties that the United States has taken the leadership on. And I applaud his unstinting commitment to advancing the rights of people with disabilities. I also want to acknowledge the work of our chairman, Senator Kerry, and the work that he has done in regards to this treaty, Senator Harkin and many others who have been involved in the United States' participation in this treaty. To put it directly, we were responsible for this treaty moving forward because the United States has been in the leadership of protecting people with disabilities. This is a civil rights, human rights issue, the way we treat people with disabilities. And Mr. President, we know that the history of America was not always what it is today. And we know the struggles that people with disabilities have had in getting access to the services that we sometimes take for granted. I remember many years ago, I visited our state institution for children with developmentally disabilities. And I saw in one large room literally 100 children receiving no care at all, most of them not clothed. I knew that we could do better in this country. And today, our access to health services for people with disabilities is remarkably better. I remember when if you had a physical disability and were confined to a wheelchair, it was basically impossible to get use of public transportation. We have changed those policies in our country, recognizing that every American has the right to basic services. I remember when it was difficult for people to get public education in the traditional schools if you had disabilities. We have changed those laws in America. We've changed our public accommodation laws. We've changed our employment laws. We have led the world in saying that it's a basic right that people with disabilities have the same protections as every one of us. And I'm proud of the progress that we've made here in the United States. I was part of the Congress in 1990 that passed the American with Disabilities Act. Very proud to be part of the Congress that passed that law. And I remember two of our colleagues who have been in the forefront of this work. Senator Dole, whose name has been mentioned, has been one of the great leaders in this body with providing the rights of people with disabilities. And Congressman Tony Coelho, who I served with in the other body, in the House, took on a leadership position to bring to the public attention for us to do what was right for people with disabilities. The United States has provided international leadership. The year after we passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, my colleague in the House, Congressman Steny Hoyer, took that effort in the United States international. And in 1991, in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, we passed the Declaration on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities because of the U.S. leadership. It's now known as the Moscow document, where we've provided international aspirations to make sure that we treat people with disabilities as we would treat anyone else. We have in America the strongest protections of any country. We've improved our laws. We've led the world in providing the right legal framework, the right policies, the right programs so people with disabilities can gain access to all services. The ratification of this treaty is particularly important to the United States. I say that because it further demonstrates our leadership on this issue. We've added language in this treaty. We didn't have to do it because we didn't have to change any laws if we ratify this treaty. We are in full compliance. There's no need for America to take any further steps. All this treaty ratification does is reaffirm America's leadership on this issue and provides protection for our citizens internationally. And we made that very clear with amendments that we added to this treaty during the committee markup. We don't have to change any laws, yet it helps U.S. citizens abroad. The rights of our disabled should not end at our border. They should have the same protections when they travel to another country, or when they work in another country, or when they temporarily live in another country. We want to make sure that American citizens are treated fairly. We had a witness, Mr. President, who testified at our hearing on the ratification of this treaty about how she was in a wheelchair in another country, and she was not permitted to use her wheelchair to get access to an airplane. That's wrong. And this treaty will protect an American who happens to be in another country, who happens to have a disability, to make sure that that person can get reasonable access to transportation, reasonable access to public accommodations, that that person is not discriminated against because of her or his disability. This helps advance the basic human rights globally of people with disability. Other countries will learn from the United States. Until we ratify, we can't participate in the international discussions that are taking place to protect people with disabilities. Yet we have the most advanced laws. By our ratification of this treaty, we're in a position to help other countries advance the rights of people with disability, and that's exactly what we should be doing in America. Our nation was founded on the principles that we are all created equal, and each of us has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, regardless of our abilities. Ratifying this treaty is a strong act of diplomacy and symbol of America's continued commitment to equal justice for all. The history of our nation has been the continued expansion of rights, opportunities, and responsibilities to more and more Americans. It is in our interest, in the interest of all humankind, to see that the expansion happens in other countries too. I urge my Senate colleagues to vote for the ratification of this treaty. It's the right thing to do for the United States. It's the right thing to do standing up for basic human rights. It's the right thing to do to protect our citizens when they travel internationally. I urge my colleagues to vote for ratification. And with that, Mr. President, I would suggest the absence of a quorum.